Suicide is the second leading cause of death for those aged 10 to 34. And among the many risk factors for suicidal thoughts and behaviors, one that consistently emerges as an independent risk factor is sleep disturbance.
Welcome to Creating Wellness Moments, the podcast where we dive into the depths of the human psyche, self-discovery, and personal growth. I'm Calvin Wong, your host and fellow explorer on this journey towards mental well-being. Join me as we uncover inspiring stories, expert insights, and practical tips to cultivate a healthier and happier life. Get ready to embark on a transformative experience, one episode at a time. Let's create wellness moments together. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Creating Wellness Moments. So today, our guest is Dr. Monika Sharma, founder of Sleep Moksha. She's a sleep expert and experienced consultant from the University of Pennsylvania. She has extensive experience as a behavioral sleep specialist and in many researches at leading hospitals in India as well as the United States. She has proven her impact by developing new programs and guidelines. Dr. Monika Sharma works as a sleep advisor for some of the highest performers around the world here for recovery, optimizing performance, and of course, mental well-being. So we're really lucky to have Dr. Monika Sharma here today to chat about sleep and its role on mental well-being. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Yeah, it's my pleasure. Maybe you could explain just a little bit about what you do at Sleep Moksha and how sleep actually increases our performance and overall well-being.
Sure, absolutely. So thank you for the lovely introduction, Calvin. And I've been working in the field, sleep field for about 16 years now so apart from my clinical practice, I also developed my niche practice with my work surrounding sleep and high performance, as you mentioned, beginning a few years ago. I strongly believe that sleep is the foundation for physical and mental well-being and also for high performance. So I advocate for everybody across all ages, also high performers, C-suite executives, elite athletes, to prioritize sleep and consider it just as important as training that they do. So we've been doing some pioneering work in this direction, and we've been pushing for this acceptance of sleep's importance. And I believe with our continuous efforts, sleep is slowly, we have a long way ahead of us, but it is moving to the forefront as an important factor in health and well-being and also athletics and sports. And with my work, I have noticed that high performers are more and more getting interested in optimizing sleep and are paying more attention to sleep as a tool for to enhance performance and their overall well-being.
See, so when someone wants to optimize sleep, is the goal just to get better sleep or have less sleep but better quality?
That's a good question, and especially when we talk about high performers, Kelvin, they're always pressed on time. So unfortunately, on numerous occasions, they don't have the opportunity to meet their sleep needs on a regular basis because of the schedules, right? Be that the travel schedules or they have back-to-back matches, they're jet-lagged, etc. So yes, they are sometimes, genuinely pressed on getting that adequate sleep window, and sleep sufficiency is one of the barriers that they are facing towards their performance and also recovery. So yes, in those cases, in that situations, we really want to train them in optimizing quality of their sleep. So whatever sleep opportunity they have, we want them to have high quality sleep where all the restoration, where all the recovery, and where all the rejuvenation comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we touch more into the mental health aspect of sleep, I'm sure everyone would like to know how we could optimize our sleep and just some of the small actionable tips that we could do to have better sleep.
Sure. So I can give you, say, 100 tips, but I really believe in taking baby steps, one step at a time. And if there is one thing that I want your listeners, to prioritize, It is consistency. Really, the key here is consistency and regularity. So if they can be on a consistent sleep schedule, that will do a lot of good in terms of maintaining their rhythms, circadian rhythms, and that will in turn improve their mental health and their day-to-day functioning. So physically, mentally speaking, optimizing their performance and productivity, regularity and consistency is something that I would say should be at the top of their list when prioritizing sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a perfect segue. Walk us through the circadian rhythm and why it's important for us to have this consistency in order to have a better brain cognitivity, which will therefore lead to better well-being.
Yeah, sure. So, when we talk about rhythms, the thing, and when we talk about sleep, Calvin, we have to understand that sleep, brain loves predictability. So when we are on a regular schedule, we are honoring our rhythms, and brain gets predictability that way. That's why I always tell my clients that the starting point is going to be having a consistent bedtime and a consistent wake up time, because that is how we regulate our circadian rhythms, our biological clock.
I see. So, in order for us to work with the predictability, this is
Yeah.
kind of what avoids our brain from having this kind of stress response because we know what to expect. Is that right?
Yeah, so I always tell my clients that we need to think the way we think for our children, when they are younger. So there's a schedule for everything, right? And then when we grow out of that, toddlerhood or childhood, the moment we enter into that teen phase, adolescence, the young adults, we just keep forgetting and honoring the schedules and the routines, which do a lot of good. And that is, I told you, that is because the brain loves predictability. It just knows that what is next in line for me. So that way it functions better. And it is not in that, fight or flight situation. There is no uncertainty to deal with it and additional stress to deal with that, what is it that I'm going to throw next? So, yes.
Yeah, what happens to us when we don't get the quality sleep or enough sleep? How does that play a role into how our health is?
Yeah. So, Kevin, most people know firsthand that sleep affects our mental health, it affects our physical health. And after all, there's a reason it's said that someone in a bad mood woke up on the wrong side of the bed. So, I think everyone must be very familiar with not so great feelings they wake up to after a night of poor sleep, say, in terms of tired body, tired mind, slightly grumpy, a little bit irritable, probably a headache, nowhere close to the feeling of freshness and good mood. And some of my patients actually describe themselves as walking zombies. So it's very intuitive to imagine that sleep impacts our emotional health, and that's exactly what we see, in research also. That not getting enough sleep, even just for one night, can affect your mood, your thought process, your energy level, memory, learning, and so much more. So when we talk about this aspect from sleep's perspective, and what especially I get to see in my clinical practice is that when patients suffering from sleep disorder, when I'm seeing them, uh, for example, if we talk about insomnia, which is the most common sleep disorder, the rate of mental health disorders in these patients is about 40%. And those patients with chief complaints of excessive daytime sleepiness is even higher. It's about 50%, right? So it is high indeed. So, and when I work closely with these patients after my initial workup and we are done with the assessments and the testing, I see that sleep disturbances often present before the onset of any mental health disorder or psychiatric disorder. And that is something which is not very well understood. So, in the past, especially with the psychiatric body, very much has been the case that sleep disturbance is a secondary phenomenon of mental health disorders. So, sleep disturbance is because of ongoing depression. Sleep problem is because of underlying anxiety, right? Until very recently, commonly held belief was that with psychiatric treatment, sleep problems will become better. So psychiatric treatment will treat sleep problems. Yeah. And with the amount of research that has taken place in the past years and the amount of data we have is unbelievable, we can say that this is gross oversimplification. The relationship between sleep and mental health is actually bidirectional, right? And we can tell that from our experience also, and also what I very commonly see in my practice, that sleep deprivation, acute sleep deprivation, short-term sleeplessness, say over the course of a single night or a few nights, can lead to not only psychological but also physiological effects that has some bearing on mental health. For instance, as soon as you sleep deprive somebody, and to give you just a better understanding of how sleep deprivation is translated, into our day-to-day functioning, or I would say dysfunctioning, is that their ability to regulate emotions lessens. They begin to interpret relatively neutral stimuli in a very negative way, and their perception of pain increases. So these are just some of the way, our body and mind present sleep deprivation in our day-to-day normal functioning. So in a variety of studies, we usually, I can cite few studies done on German and Canadian medical students, where when they were sleep deprived, they were given electric shocks. And the idea was to see their brain pain threshold and at what point they yell. And it was very clear from this study that a single night of sleep deprivation altered their pain threshold, and a significant problem in inhibiting responses essentially coming from frontal lobe. So the executive functioning of our brain is especially sensitive to sleep deprivation, right? So apart from mood, which of course we understand, a wide area of cognitive functions also suffer. And in fact, there was a landmark study. It was a very interesting study, an old one about 20 years ago, which looked at poor sleep, sleep restriction, and they compared the effects of sleep deprivation, both from cognitive as well as sleepiness perspective. And they found out that even 2 hours of less sleep has significant effects equivalent from taking 2 to 3 units of alcohol. So quite really significant indeed.
Yeah, 40 to 50% more likely to have some sort of mental disorder. That's a very alarming number, actually.
Yes.
And despite all that, we all tend to take sleep for granted.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I guess one of the main questions is why do we all do that? And you earlier also talked about how sleep and the mental disorder is a bi-directional relationship, essentially, and how we tend to talk about self-care in a way that doesn't include sleep. Whereas we say that if we groom ourselves, take a shower, all these things will allow us to feel better. Yet how somehow the sleep is not included in that component usually. And how do we start getting people to frame their mind around how important sleep actually is? I think some of this awareness that we talk about is very important, but somehow I think we all know, at least to a certain extent, yet we're not taking the action to get better sleep.
That's correct. So I think, like you rightly mentioned, that education, creating awareness around this topic and having more conversations like we're having today, is really the first step towards getting there. So talking about the significance of sleep, creating this awareness, another thing that I would like to mention and talk about is the number of hours of sleep. So what exactly is our sleep need? And so sleep needs, they vary over our lifetime, right? We all know that starting with infants, they sleep for about 14 to 18 hours a day, to toddlers who can sleep up to 16 hours a day. Teens should be sleeping for about 8 to 10 hours a day, and adults, whether we like it or we don't, we genuinely do need 7 to 9 hours of sleep on regular basis. Some people think that they can get by 5 hours of sleep or so, but the percentage of those people is 0.01%. So that's a very rare gene who actually, technically speaking, are short sleepers, but most of us do need about 7 to 9 hours of sleep to feel good, to look good, and to perform, at our optimal best. And another thing, right, like you very rightly mentioned, that people are aware, as I mentioned, that they are paying more attention to sleep now, but there are some barriers and challenges. And I especially see that, Kelvin, in teenage population. So, of course, sleep is vital for people of any age, but especially in teens. And that's because profound mental, physical, social, and emotional development takes place during this time, right? Which is a sensitive phase, and it requires good, adequate, optimum quality of sleep for brain to perform all the magical functions that I just mentioned. So yes, teens, like most of us, they face unique sleep challenges. And on a regular basis, I see teens in my clinic facing numerous challenges to getting consistent and restorative sleep, right? And I think recognizing those challenges, so coming back to the point that you made, that recognizing those challenges is really the first step, as it helps each one of us, especially teens and their caregivers, their family members, make a plan so that teens get the help they need. So, thank you for that question. And when it comes to teens, I would say that family, as a family, even parents, they have a very significant role to play here. And some of the things I do, when I'm seeing teenage population, is also educate parents. So, of course, I have a lot of work to do with teenagers, one on one, but I do take time, and my approach is that even parents need to be educated about what's going on with them in terms of their biology. So, if you talk about specific reason for sleep problems among teenagers, there is no one specific problem really to point out. Instead, there are several factors that can be contributing to this problem or their challenges or barriers to getting a good sleep, and they may vary from person to person or teenager to teenager. Now, especially if I talk about teenagers, parents, as caregivers, as a society, we must know that adolescents, they have a strong natural tendency towards being a night owl. And I see so many parents complaining about it. So what we see is that they are staying up later at night and they're sleeping longer into the morning. So these are typical, schedules that we get to see. And why that is happening. So the first thing is that teens have a sleep drive that builds more slowly, which means that they naturally do not start to feel tired until later in the evening. So their energy levels are high. Secondly, physiologically speaking, the body starts producing melatonin later in the day, which is the hormone that helps promote sleep. So if I talk about sleep schedules in these adolescents and teenagers, if they're allowed to sleep on their own schedule, most of them would be sleeping from, say, 11:30 p.m. or midnight until 8 or 9 in the morning. But the problem is, school starts time forces these teens to wake up much earlier in the morning. Resultantly, they have reduced sleep on weekdays, and they are playing the catch-up game on the weekends by staying in the bed for longer. The second reason, which we very commonly get to see, is teenagers, especially in this time and age, they have a jam-packed weekly schedule. They have school assignments, they have project work to do, they also have social life, there are extracurricular activities, there are sports, right? So these are just some of the things that can require their time and attention. And with so much for them to fit into each day, many teens do not allocate sufficient time for sleep. So creating that sleep opportunity, creating that sleep window, is also something that we need to prioritize. They may stay up late during the week to finish homework or during the weekend when hanging out with friends, both which can reinforce their night out schedule. We've heard things about FOMO, then they have a lot of pressure to succeed, especially something that I see in high performers, which can be stressful. And as you mentioned, stress has been known to contribute to sleeping problems and insomnia. Other challenges, Calvin, that we discuss at length with my clients at Sleep Moksha is use of electronic devices. And a lot of parents approach me, they have a lot of complaints regarding this one factor, which is excessive use of electronic devices, their cell phones, their tablet. And research also suggests that about 90% or more of them keep at least one device in their bedroom at night. And the thing with excessive screen time late into the evening is, of course, it is contributing to sleep problems, and there is a whole science behind it explaining this phenomena. But one thing that I want to mention here is that these sleep devices are very stimulating, and incoming notifications from these devices throughout the night, because they have a tendency to sleep with one of these devices with them in their room, it disrupts their sleep. So these are some of the common challenges and barriers to getting good restful sleep. I would say across population, but more so in teenagers. And also, of course, if there are any underlying mental health conditions, there are any neurodevelopmental conditions like ADHD or autism, or sleep disturbance is because of an underlying sleep disorder, right? Like I mentioned, insomnia disorder or obstructive sleep apnea. This is what we commonly see. But there are also other sleep conditions like sleep paralysis, narcolepsy, RNS, which can also be contributing to this. Another thing, Calvin, that I wanted to mention about this is suicide in this population. So, suicide is the second leading cause of death for those aged 10 to 34. And among the many risk factors for suicidal thoughts and behaviors, one that consistently emerges as an independent risk factor is sleep disturbance.
Hey there, amazing listeners. Before we dive deeper in today's insightful conversation, I want to take a quick moment to give a shout out to the driving force behind this podcast, my very own mental health focused creative production agency, Calvin Wong Media. As you know, creating wellness moments is all about exploring the depths of the human psyche and fostering personal growth. And guess what? It would not be possible if it were not for Calvin Wong Media. We conceptualize, humanize, and bring your story to life using unique storytelling techniques that engages the audience. So, the next time you're inspired by an episode or find yourself engaged in a thought-provoking conversation here, remember, that's the result of the support of Calvin Wong Media and its lovely kinds. If you're looking to amplify your message, tell your story with authenticity, and connect with your audience on a deeper level, reach out to us at calvinwongmedia.com. Now back to the conversation on creating wellness moments.
So we see common connects with sleep disorders, especially with insomnia, nightmares, and sleep apnea. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is that this sleep-suicide relationship is so important because sleep disorders represent a modifiable risk factor. So that's a good news. And it is something that was noted a decade ago that several sleep medicine interventions can actually make a difference in the lives of individuals who may be on a trajectory to suicide or self-harm. And there was a recent analysis of a large medical record, and it was observed that having a sleep medicine consultation was actually a protective factor for subsequent suicide attempts among those with sleep disorder. So we should all be working on protecting our sleep for improving our mental and physical health. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. So you mentioned about this, the relationship between sleep and suicide.
Yeah.
And I think you're very right on that in that sense. But just picture someone being in that state where they're already not getting the sleep that they want, like having good sleep, having the good sleeping schedule. It's I think it's very tough for someone to hear in that sense, in that state where that someone just tells them to get better sleep. Like it has to be something more than that they need to be able to hear in order to make these adjustments, right?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's what it is, So having seeking help, professional help, and as I mentioned that there are studies which have made it has come out that having a sleep consultation, working closely with a therapist or a sleep expert will help them tremendously to cope with that situation.
Yeah, is there any counselors or therapists that you also work with or that has referred you to patients that needed a better sleep in order to improve their mental health?
Yes, yes. So it happens, as I mentioned, a lot of times that there's a lot of stigma attached, not just around mental health, but also sleep, especially in younger adults. Sleeplessness is still, we are living in a society where it is still worn as a badge of honor. Yeah. So, especially in, say, students or high performers, so those who are sacrificing their sleep, who are working out thrice a day, who are pulling an all-nighter to prepare for their exams, are worshipped.
Yeah, talking about this, about how our schedules are so jam-packed, right? And this is why we put the sacrifice into sleep. And one of the things that I think is a key factor is the fact that our schedules are so jam-packed.
Mm-hmm.
We also tend to want some personal time before we sleep, and we'll spend maybe like at least a few hours or at least 1 hour doing something just to wind down, if you will. And what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, absolutely. When it comes to sleep, Calvin, it's all about timings. So having me time or self-care routine, it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm a big fan of that. And I advocate that, right? But we really have to be judicious. What does self-care mean to you? So if it is having, say, listening to music, so I would say that the selection of music is important, right? And if it is about taking long, elaborate shower before bedtime, that's excellent. And having some aromatherapy, having a shower with some music in the background, having some candle, fragrant candles, all this helps. I mean, so it really depends on what works for you. So because it is unique to each one of us. When it comes to use of technology, many people use technology as this is my me time, binge watching, doing Netflix. So we have to be smart enough to understand that when we think about Netflix or when we talk about any other engagement, active engagement that we have with screen, that is something just going before bed is not something that we recommend. As I mentioned, that it is very stimulating. So if you want to have say, if you're fond of some seasons, some series, do that. But not right before your bed while you are in the bed. So you schedule your, me time or self-care routine, but that should not be something which you're doing it sitting in the bed, because the way our brain functions and the conditioning that takes place, when we are doing whatever activities we are doing while sitting in the bed or lying in the bed is not very conducive to for brain to induce sleep. So what I suggest my clients is that if there is something which is very dear to you and you don't want to give up, right, schedule it in such a manner that it's not interfering with your sleep onset at night. So anything which is, activating the rest and digest system, right, the parasympathetic system, versus anything which is stimulating fight and flight situation, which is the sympathetic nervous system, is something that we talk about in detail. And, we come and we formulate strategies which we both agree to that are conducive to sleep, and also taking care of the activities and things that matter to you in terms of relaxation or in terms of me time, or not having that feeling of FOMO that you're missing out on something in terms of social media usage, being on Instagram or any other social media platform. So everything boils down to timing when it comes to sleep. There is a good time, there's a right time, for you having technology use, working on laptop, eating food, listening to music. So these are some of very small, subtle tweaks that we do with our patients when we are designing strategies for them for better sleep.
Yeah, in terms of talking about strategies here, I did want to go back to the part in terms of mental health, because having this onset that's 40 to 50% just from not having good sleep is something I think we could totally manage if we just spend the time to do it, right? And
Absolutely.
yeah, and if a patient were, or a client that were to come in to seek help to get better sleep because they are essentially trying to do this early intervention to prevent their mental well-being to go downhill, what are the strategies, like how would you walk through this session with this person?
Yeah. So you very rightly mentioned, and that's the message that we want to bring out, that sleep is a strong indicator of our physical and mental well-being, and it is the easiest to identify. So physical and mental conditions, they affect our ability to sleep on a regular basis. And if we are just mindful and paying more attention towards our sleeping schedule, and generally speaking, our relationship with sleep, is it good? Is it bad? Is it not the same as it used to be? I'm not as solid sleeper that I used to be. I'm taking a lot more time to fall asleep. And why am I having these frequent awakenings at night, which is new to me? And for no good reason, I'm waking up at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd set my alarm for 7 a.m. These are very simple indicators that something is off track, and that I need to probably have a check-in with myself in terms of physical, how am I doing physically, how am I doing mentally. So these are very quick, simple things that we can do on a regular basis. As I mentioned, that sleep is the first one that goes out of window. It's just that we don't pay attention. And that is because as a society, we do not give it the regard that it deserves. And over a period of time, when this is not looked into, when it is not addressed, then at a very simple, occasional, sleepless nights, they take chronic shape, right? And now it's not just sleep, but a host of other mental and physical problems to address. So if sleep, we are able to pick up and identify that something is off track, as I mentioned, that it's very easy to manage at that point. When it is still acute and it is shorter, and if it goes undiagnosed and untreated, and it's not a full-fledged sleep disorder at this point. It's only when we do not pay attention to it and we think that we are doing fine, as I said, that okay, 5 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep, we think that we can get by with. And the thing with sleep is that we have a very poor subjective perception of sleep. Healthy individuals are notoriously poor at self-assessing their sleep. And that's why I'm stressing that we need to have more conversations around this topic so that we help them to pay more attention towards their sleep health. So, and Calvin, if we look at all the leading causes of death in today's world, be that cancer, be that cardiovascular disease, be that metabolic conditions, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, dementia, stroke, psychiatric diseases, even suicide, as I mentioned. they all have a significant and causal links with poor sleep.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
yeah, it has a wide range of negative health. So the starting point is that we give sleep the importance, right? And we have frequent check-ins with ourselves. So even if we just pay more attention towards basic things like how much time I'm taking to fall asleep, am I experiencing frequent nighttime awakenings? And after these awakenings, I have a problem going back to sleep, or I have early morning awakenings and I'm feeling sleepy and drowsy throughout the day. I am a little bit groggy. I don't feel like getting up in the morning. It's a challenge to drag myself out of the bed each morning. The mood is off. The productivity is down. The performance is not that great. You're having more errors at work or at school. So these are some of the red flags and telltales of your sleep health.
Yeah, so bringing, since we're on that topic, what I hear is there's actually a lot of signs we can tell from our sleep, and whether it be good sleep or waking up in the middle of the night, how long it takes to fall asleep. I think one of the common things that does occur is people tend to wake up from their alarm and then they hit the snooze button
Correct.
multiple times,
Multiple
right? Yeah, and I understand that there's a negative impact on that in terms of our sleep health and just mentally in terms of cognitive function. Can you
Correct.
talk a little bit about that and
Yes,
why it's bad?
yeah, that's a great point. And so, if we are dependent on alarms, you asked about circadian rhythms, right? So, our dependency on alarms tells a lot about our sleep health. So, it is because we have poor circadian rhythms, right? That anyone with good sleep health, right? And anyone who is having a strong sleep schedule in terms of consistency is not generally dependent on alarms in waking up in the morning. So that is a good indicator of sleep health. Now, the second part that you talked about is dependence on alarm tells us about circadian rhythms. Number one. Now, the snoozing, that's one of the bad or unhealthy behaviors when it comes to sleep is pressing the snooze button. So what is happening is that your body is not prepared to wake up, right? And we are forcing sleep on us by delaying that waking up. And essentially what is happening is that we are in and out of that sleep wakeful cycle again and again with alarm going on and off, which is disrupting our sleep cycle again. So the best thing to do at this point is just get up when the alarm goes off. So snoozing actually does more harm than any good. We snooze in the hope that we'll get extra 10 minutes or 15 minutes of sleep. But whatever sleep you're getting after alarm goes off is a very poor quality suboptimum sleep that we are getting. And that is because, as I mentioned, that your brain is going in and out of sleep stages. So the sleep is disrupted. So even with that 5 minutes, 10 minutes of extra sleep that you think, you are getting is not going to do any good, but only harm.
Yeah, thanks for that answer. So from what I understand in terms of sleep cycle, we have something called REM sleep, right? And from my understanding, it does take a few hours to get into that state, and that's usually when we actually get the recovery. And when we hit the snooze button, we'll never end up in that REM sleep phase where we actually get the restful sleep that we need. At least from my understanding, maybe you could correct me and talk more about that.
Sure. So when we talk about good sleep or sleep health, there are a few parameters or components that define good sleep, right? One of them is quantity of sleep we've talked about, which is, depending on the age. The other thing is quality of sleep, which I've mentioned a couple of times. So quality of sleep is restorative sleep, the deep sleep, right? And when I say hitting the snooze button, essentially hitting the snooze button again and again, and disrupted sleep cycles, whether that is coming from the notifications from phone or hitting the snooze button, it is taking the quality of sleep away because of the frequent awakening. So anyone who's experiencing frequent awakening at night is essentially not getting deep sleep or quality sleep or restorative sleep. So talking about stages of sleep, deep sleep and REM sleep, both are important for recovery, rejuvenation, and restorative sleep. You know, what we all want. So these are the stages of sleep, deep sleep and REM sleep or dream sleep, what we call, where all the magic takes place, where all the healing, the rejuvenation, the growth, right, takes place. So what we see in patients, say, for example, suffering from insomnia, because they have a tendency to have broken sleep or fragmented sleep because of number of awakenings during night, and typically they have also they struggle to get back to sleep. So what is happening is that they are in and out of sleep stages, and if the brain is unable to spend enough adequate time in these recovery stages, which is deep sleep, or for whatever reasons is not getting into REM sleep, then next day morning, despite sleeping for maybe 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep, such patients will wake up feeling tired and lethargic and groggy and irritable. So that is a clear indication of poor quality sleep. So, how you feel in the morning is a big indicator of your sleep health and how this day is going to look like, right? So, if we are waking up feeling tired and lethargic and irritable, so we are starting our day, on that note. Whereas if we are waking up, fully refreshed, feeling like a rock star, you can imagine in your head that probably I've touched all the stages of sleep. I've had adequate sleep. I've had restful sleep. And that's the reason you wake up feeling like a rock star with good energy level and mood. And then you're already looking forward to your day, which is full of productivity and performance.
Yeah, thank you for spending the time here to educate us on sleep and how that plays a role into mental health. I think that's very important. And just for everyone out there, I did want to repeat that it's up to 40 to 50% prevalence if you don't get adequate sleep to have mental disorders. So I think we should all put more importance into getting better sleep. And again, thank you for coming on the show, and let's create more wellness moments together.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Calvin.